A millionaire steps out of his limousine and sees something that stops him cold. A single mother is sleeping on the sidewalk with two babies in her arms. But when he looks closer, the twins are his exact copy. What he discovers that night changes everything forever. If this story interested you, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and tell us which city you're watching from. We'll continue. The penthouse of the Millennium Tower Hotel overlooked all of New York City, but Alexander "Alex" Harrison Wells couldn't appreciate the view. His eyes wandered unfocused across the city, while his mind still processed the events of the past few weeks. The reflection in the window showed a 35-year-old man, dark hair with slight gray at the temples, wearing an impeccable Italian suit. That seemed to weigh a ton on his shoulders. "Mr. Wells, the board members are already waiting in the meeting room." His assistant's voice sounded over the intercom. Alex adjusted his burgundy tie, a gift from his father last Christmas. Richard Wells had always been a man of calculated gestures. Even his gifts came loaded with meaning and expectations. The tie was the same color as the one he wore when he took over the presidency of the Wells Group 40 years ago. The corridor leading to the meeting room seemed longer than usual. Each step echoed on the Italian marble floor, reminding him of the weight of responsibility he now carried. The solid double wooden doors opened to reveal 15 serious faces waiting for him. Some he had known since childhood. They were close friends of his father. Others were new to the board, but all shared the same expectant expression. "Gentlemen, good morning," his voice came out firmer than expected. Alex took the chair at the head of the table, the same one his father had occupied for decades. The cold leather seat seemed to reject his body. "Alex, before we begin," William Stewart, the most senior board member, cleared his throat. "We want to express our condolences again. Your father was a giant in the American market." Murmurs of agreement echoed through the room. Alex nodded mechanically. He had heard variations of this phrase hundreds of times in the past few weeks. "And we're certain you'll continue his legacy," William completed, with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. The legacy, always the legacy. It was as if his entire life had been preparation for this moment, even when he tried to escape it. The years he spent traveling the world, the different jobs he had using false names, the modest apartment he maintained in Miami, all had been attempts to escape this destiny. The meeting followed its course with presentations of reports and projections. Alex observed the graphs and numbers parading on the screens with an almost physical detachment. His mind wandered to Sunday mornings of his childhood, when his father forced him to read financial reports while other boys played ball. And what about the situation of the Boston branch? The CFO's question brought him back to the present. "Maintain the restructuring plan," he answered automatically, repeating words he had heard his father say so many times. "Cut whatever necessary to meet the quarter's targets." The words left his mouth as if they belonged to someone else. This was what everyone expected of him, after all. The son of Richard Wells, the heir to the empire, the new CEO of the group that made billions in revenue each year. The meeting stretched on for 2 more hours. When it finally ended, Alex returned to the penthouse that now served as his temporary residence. He couldn't imagine returning to the family mansion. Every room in that house was impregnated with his father's presence. The sun was beginning to set over New York, painting the sky in orange tones. Alex loosened the burgundy tie and poured himself a drink. From the 40th floor, people looked like ants following their lives without the weight of empires on their shoulders. That's when his gaze caught something unusual on the external stairs of the adjacent building. A young woman was sitting there with 3 small children. 2 of them appeared to be twins and all wore simple but clean clothes. The woman was hugging the children, trying to protect them from the cold wind that was beginning to blow. Alex picked up the binoculars he kept on the side table, a habit he had developed for observing the city in his moments of reflection. As he focused the image on the woman, his heart stopped for an instant. That face, he knew it very well. "Emily," he murmured to himself, as a wave of memories flooded him. Emily Grace Parker. The name echoed in his mind like a long-forgotten song. 5 years ago, she was a junior analyst in the finance department of the Miami branch. where Alex had worked incognito for a few months, using the name David Miller. At the time, he was in another of his escapes from family pressure, trying to prove to himself that he could build a career on his own merit. Their relationship had been intense, albeit brief. Emily was brilliant. She had graduated with honors from the University of Miami and won a master's scholarship that she ended up declining to help her family. Her smile illuminated the most tedious meetings, and her sharp intelligence always brought innovative perspectives to projects. Alex lowered the binoculars and closed his eyes, letting the memories flow. Lunches at the small restaurant near the office, conversations about literature on South Beach, the dreams she shared about revolutionizing the financial market with more humanized proposals. Emily had a unique way of seeing the world. She saw numbers as tools for social transformation, not just as profit indicators. The romance lasted only 3 months until Alex was summoned back to New York by his father. He left without explanations, without goodbyes. It was his pattern, disappearing before ties became too deep. But Emily was different. For the first time, he felt he was abandoning something truly precious. Now, 5 years later, she was there, on the stairs of the building, adjacent to his hotel, with 3 children who couldn't be more than 4 years old. His heart raced when he focused the binoculars on the children again. The features were unmistakable, the same face shape he saw every morning in the mirror, the same green eyes he had inherited from his paternal grandmother. Impossible, he murmured, but the resemblance was too disturbing to be coincidence. One of the twins coughed violently, and Emily hugged him tighter, whispering something in his ear. The scene made his stomach turn. He picked up the phone and dialed the reception. "Please, I need information about the people on the stairs of the adjacent building." 15 minutes later, his assistant entered the penthouse with a folder. "Sir, I've gathered some preliminary data," she said, handing him the documents. Emily Grace Parker, 32 years old, worked at the Wells Group from 2018 to 2020. She was laid off during the collective cuts of the Miami branch restructuring. Alex felt his blood freeze, the restructuring that he himself had authorized that morning, repeating his father's words like a programmed robot. Records show that she tried to contact HR several times after the dismissal, but her requests were filed without response, the assistant continued. She lost her apartment a few months later and, according to building staff reports, has been appearing in the area in recent weeks. "And the children?" His voice came out hoarse. "Triplets. Sir, born in 2021. I couldn't get more information yet, but you may leave," Alex interrupted her, his eyes fixed on the documents in his hand. When he was alone, he let himself fall heavily into the armchair. The dates matched perfectly, the period they were together, the birth of the children. His hands trembled as he leafed through the papers. Another coughing fit caught his attention. Through the glass, he saw the same twin from before bent over. While Emily tried to calm him, the scene galvanized him into action. He picked up the phone again, this time to make a different call. "Dr. Thompson, I need an urgent favor. I have an emergency case for you to attend to now." He hung up the phone and kept observing the family through the window. The Wells empire, built over 3 generations, always had the motto of not mixing business with emotions. His father repeated this like a mantra, but at that moment, for the first time since he had taken over the presidency, Alex felt that he needed to make a decision based solely on his heart. St. Luke's Hospital was known to be the most exclusive in New York. Its immaculate and silent corridors contrasted with the human drama unfolding in the children's emergency room. Alex observed through the glass while Dr. Thompson examined little Lucas, one of the twins, who was still fighting a severe asthma attack. Emily was sitting next to the stretcher, her hands intertwined with her son's. She still hadn't directed a single word to Alex since he appeared on the stairs of the building offering help. Her face showed a mixture of wounded pride and maternal concern that broke his heart. The other 2 children, Michael, the oldest, and Thomas, the other twin, were sitting on a sofa in the corner of the room, watching everything with attentive and frightened eyes. Alex couldn't stop looking at them, identifying traits of his own family in each expression, in each gesture. "The condition is serious but manageable," said Dr. Thompson, approaching Alex. "He needs proper treatment, specific medications, and a more stable environment. The crises were aggravated by exposure to the elements." Alex nodded, feeling the weight of guilt on his shoulders. How many nights had those children, his children, spent out in the open while he slept in his luxury penthouse? "Emily," he called softly, approaching her for the first time since they arrived at the hospital. "Can we talk?" She hesitated for a moment, looked at Lucas, who was now sleeping more peacefully thanks to the medications, and finally agreed with a nod. She got up and followed him to a more private corner of the room. "Why did you never tell me?" he asked, keeping his voice low. "Tell you what, David, or should I say Alexander Wells?" Her voice had a hint of bitterness. "That I was pregnant by the man who lied about his identity and disappeared without a trace?" Alex felt the blow. Every word was true and hurt like a stab wound. "I tried," she continued. "When I found out who you really were, I tried to contact you through the company. But guess what? I was fired before. I could talk to you. A restructuring, they said. Without notice, without consideration for my condition." "I didn't know," he murmured. "I swear I didn't know about your pregnancy, Emily. If I had known—" "If you had known what?" she interrupted. "Would you have used your power and money to solve everything? Is that what the Wells do, isn't it? Throw money at problems until they disappear?" Her words hit him hard, but Alex kept his calm. He looked at the children. Michael was now consoling Thomas, who seemed frightened by the medical equipment connected to his brother. "No," he finally answered. "It's not about money. It's about doing the right thing, even if belatedly. Those children are my sons, Emily, our children, and I want to take responsibility." "Now?" she laughed without humor. "After 5 years, after we lost everything, after I had to abandon my master's degree, my dreams." "Especially now," he said, his voice firm. "I can't change the past, Emily, but I can do something about the present and future." He took a card from his pocket and handed it to her. "This is the address of an apartment on Central Park West. It's furnished and ready to receive you all. 3 bedrooms, recreation area, 24-hour security. The children need stability. You know that." Emily looked at the card in her hands, then at Lucas on the stretcher. Her resistance was beginning to give way to the reality of her situation. "And there's more," continued Alex. "I found your academic documents. You were the best student in your course, Emily. You had a master's scholarship in economics at Columbia, which I couldn't accept because I was pregnant and alone," she completed. "The scholarship is still available," he revealed. "I spoke with the program coordinator. They would be happy to welcome you next semester." Emily closed her eyes, and Alex saw a solitary tear roll down her face. When she opened them again, there was a mixture of emotions in her gaze: anger, hope, fear, determination. "I'm not doing this for you," she finally said. "I'm doing it for my children. They deserve a better chance than I had." "Our children," Alex corrected gently. "And that's all I ask. A chance to be part of their lives, and to try to fix my mistakes." The moment was interrupted by a small noise. Michael had approached them, his green eyes, so similar to his father's, observing the scene with a wisdom beyond his years. "Mom," he called softly, "Lucas is waking up." The apartment on Central Park West was larger than any place where Emily and the children had lived in recent years. Natural light flooded the rooms through the large windows, and the view of the nearby park created a sense of peace that they hadn't experienced for a long time. Michael was the first to venture through the new house, his eyes shining with excitement as he explored each room. The twins followed him closely, still a bit hesitant but visibly enchanted with the space. Lucas, already recovered from the asthma attack thanks to the proper treatment, was breathing much better in the air-conditioned environment. "Mom, there's a piano," Michael's voice echoed from the living room. Emily found her son sitting on the bench of the black grand piano, his small hands reverently sliding over the keys. She had never mentioned to Alex that Michael showed a natural talent for music. How could he know? "It was a hunch," Alex's voice sounded behind her, as if reading her thoughts. I noticed how he reacted to the sound of the violin playing in the hospital. His eyes, there was something special in them. Emily watched as Michael, without any prior instruction, began to play single notes, creating a simple but harmonious melody. The boy seemed hypnotized by the instrument, completely absorbed in his musical exploration. "He's always been like this," she said, her voice softening for the first time since she had reunited with Alex. "He creates music with anything. Pot lids, empty bottles. Sometimes I wake up at night and find him humming melodies he invents." Alex approached the piano, maintaining a respectful distance from Emily. "We can arrange lessons for him if you want. There's an excellent conservatory nearby." Before Emily could respond, a noise coming from the children's room caught her attention. They found Thomas sitting on the floor, surrounded by pieces of the educational tablet that Alex had left for them. "Sorry," said the boy, looking worried. "I just wanted to see how it worked inside." To everyone's surprise, the tablet wasn't broken. Thomas had managed to dismantle it with surprising precision for a child his age. The pieces were methodically organized on the floor. "You did this by yourself?" asked Alex, fascinated. Thomas nodded, still wary of being in trouble. "I wanted to understand why it glows. There are some interesting things in here." Alex knelt beside his son, observing how the pieces were arranged. "Do you know how to put it back together?" The boy's face lit up with the challenge. In a few minutes, his small hands worked deftly, reconnecting components with an intuition that seemed impossible for his 4 years. "He's always been fascinated by electronic devices," explained Emily, observing the scene with a mixture of pride and concern. "Sometimes I think he sees the world in a different way." Lucas, who had been quiet until then, approached his brother with a drawing pad he had found in his new room. While Thomas finished assembling the tablet, Lucas began to draw surprisingly complex diagrams for his age. "This is how it works," he said, showing the drawing to his brother. "Like the sun in an energy garden." Alex picked up the drawing, impressed with the complexity of what he saw. These weren't childish scribbles. They were basic but recognizable diagrams of a solar energy system. How did they learn this?" he asked, his voice choked with emotion. Emily sat on the nearby bed, her resistance beginning to diminish in the face of the natural interaction between father and sons. "They've always been special," she said softly. "Even in the worst circumstances, they never lost their curiosity, their desire to learn. We spent hours in public libraries. It was a warm and safe place. They devoured every book they could reach." Alex felt his heart tighten. These extraordinary children, his sons, had so much potential, so much to offer the world, and he had almost lost the chance to know them. "Emily," he called, his voice serious. "I know I don't deserve it, but I ask you to let me be part of their lives. Not as the president of the Wells Group, not as a rich man trying to compensate for the past with money. Just as a father who wants to know his children and help them develop their gifts." She looked at the children. Michael was still, playing the piano in the living room, creating his own music. Thomas was turning on the newly assembled tablet with a satisfied smile. Lucas continued his complex drawings. For the first time in years, her children seemed truly happy and safe. "One step at a time, Alex," she finally answered. "One step at a time." The news spread through the corridors of the Wells Group like wildfire. In less than a week, everyone already knew about the 3 newly discovered heirs of the company's president. Jason Wells, Alex's half-brother on his father's side, observed the movement from his office on the 38th floor with a mixture of fury and calculation. "How could he be so careless?" he murmured to himself while watching for the 1,000th time the video that had gone viral on social media. The recording showed Michael, Alex's oldest son, playing piano in the lobby of the conservatory where he had begun taking lessons. The boy was executing a complex piece with impressive naturalness, and the resemblance to the Wells family was undeniable. Jason turned off the monitor and stood up, walking to the window. From there, he could see the building where he knew the new family was installed. His father had always said that Alex was weak, too sentimental to lead the empire he had built. Now that weakness was exposed for all to see. "Mr. Jason," his secretary interrupted his thoughts. Dr. Reynolds is here. Say for the meeting you requested. The family lawyer entered the room carrying a thick folder of documents. Jason knew him well. He was the same one who had handled his parents' divorce, ensuring that his mother got only a minimal fraction of the assets. Tell me you found something useful. Jason went straight to the point. Well, the lawyer adjusted his glasses. There are some interesting points. Ms. Parker tried to contact the company several times during her pregnancy. All protocols were filed by higher order. Higher order? Jason leaned forward, interested. Your father, Mr. Richard Wells, personally ordered that any attempt at contact from her be blocked. Apparently, he knew about the pregnancy. Jason felt a smile forming on his lips. Continue. There's more. The lawyer pulled a specific document. Your father's will has an interesting clause that hasn't been made public yet. Meanwhile, in the Central Park West apartment, Alex was facing his own challenges. Sitting in the living room, he watched Emily helping Thomas with a surprising project. The boy had developed a rudimentary prototype of a solar energy system using discarded electronic parts. See? Explained Thomas, connecting wires with surgical precision. It's like Lucas drew, but I made some changes here and here. The project, although made with simple materials, demonstrated an understanding of basic energy principles that would be remarkable even in an adult. Emily, who now dedicated her mornings to preparing to resume her master's degree, assisted her son with technical terms that she herself was relearning. Impressive, said Alex, genuinely amazed. You thought of all this by yourself? Lucas helped me with the drawings, replied Thomas, and Mum explained to me about conductors and resistance. Alex noticed how Emily smiled while helping her son. It was the same smile that had enchanted him years ago when she presented brilliant analyses in company meetings. His heart ached to think of how much potential had been wasted due to his irresponsible actions. The moment was interrupted by the sound of the piano. Michael was practicing for his first performance at the conservatory. In just 2 weeks of lessons, he had already exceeded all his teacher's expectations. He has a rare gift, commented Emily, her voice soft. The teacher said he's never seen anything like it. It's as if the music was already inside him, just waiting to come out. Lucas, who was lying on the carpet drawing, raised his head. Michael makes the notes dance, he said with simplicity, like the light particles in my drawing. Alex approached to see his son's new drawing. It was a complex diagram that merged musical notation with what appeared to be a quantum physics diagram. Obviously a childish interpretation, but still extraordinary. How do you know about light particles? Asked Alex, intrigued. From the library books, replied Lucas, and from the documentaries that Mum let us watch on the public library computer. Emily discreetly wiped away a tear. They've always been thirsty for knowledge. Even in the most difficult moments, they never lost that curiosity, that desire to learn. Alex was about to respond when his phone vibrated. It was a message from his assistant. Urgent. Extraordinary board meeting called for tomorrow, subject family succession. He felt a chill down his spine. He knew his family's corporate strategies well. An extraordinary meeting was never called without a specific purpose. And for the first time since taking over the presidency, Alex realized that he had something much more valuable to lose than control of the company. The morning began with a surprise in the Central Park West apartment. Michael, who was normally the first to wake up to practice piano, found Alex in the kitchen preparing breakfast. You know how to cook? Asked the boy, his green eyes wide with curiosity. I learned when I lived alone in London, replied Alex, skillfully flipping a pancake in the air. Before I became president of the company. Michael climbed onto a high stool at the American kitchen counter, watching attentively every movement of his father. Did you also run away from things that people wanted you to do? The question caught Alex by surprise. He put the pancake on a plate and looked at his son. Why do you ask that? Sometimes, Michael began, playing with a napkin, when everyone wants me to play the songs from the book in the right order, I just want to play the songs that are in my head. Alex sat down beside his son, feeling a deep connection with those words. You know, when I was about your age, my father wanted me to study only numbers and reports. But what I really wanted was to travel, see different places, be a normal person. And that's why you pretended to be someone else when you met Mom? The innocent question hit Alex like a punch in the stomach. You know about that? I heard... Mom talking to Aunt Amy on the phone, admitted Michael. She said you called yourself David before. Alex took a deep breath, deciding that his son deserved honesty. Yes, I pretended to be someone else. It was wrong of me. I hurt your mother and lost precious years that I could have spent with you all. But now you're here, said Michael with simplicity, and making pancakes. The moment was interrupted by the arrival of the twins, followed by Emily. She stopped at the entrance to the kitchen, surprised by the domestic scene she found. Dad makes pancakes that fly, announced Michael, making everyone laugh. Breakfast proceeded in a surprisingly light atmosphere. Thomas excitedly explained his new solar energy project, using sugar packets and utensils to demonstrate the positioning of the panels. Lucas complimented with his drawings, while Michael created an improvised song about flying pancakes. We need to talk, said Alex to Emily when the children went to get ready for their activities. There's a board meeting today. Emily noticed the tension in his voice. About? Family succession, he replied, running his hand through his hair. Jason, my half-brother, has called an extraordinary meeting. Knowing him as I do, it's not a good sign. He wants to remove you from the presidency? Asked Emily, her experience in the finance department allowing her to quickly understand the implications. Probably. But that's not what worries me. Alex looked toward the hallway where the children's voices echoed. Jason is known for using all possible means to get what he wants, and now he knows about you all. Emily paled slightly, but maintained her composure. What can we do? The use of "we" didn't go unnoticed by Alex. It was the first time she had placed herself alongside him as a partner. First, I'll reinforce the building's security, he said. I've already prepared documents officially recognizing the children's paternity and initiated the process to include them as legal heirs. It's not about money, Emily began, but Alex gently interrupted her. No, it's not. It's about protecting them, giving them all the rights and guarantees they deserve. And, he hesitated for a moment, it's about doing the right thing, finally. From the hallway came the sound of the piano. Michael had returned to practice. The melody was different from anything he had played before. An original composition that seemed to perfectly capture the moment they were living. Complex, emotional, but with a note of hope. He has your smile, said Alex softly. All of them do? It's the first thing I noticed that night when I saw them through the window. Emily felt her defenses lower a little more. And they have your eyes and your stubbornness too. Emily, Alex moved closer, maintaining a respectful distance. I know I can't undo the past, but I promise I'll protect our family no matter what happens at today's meeting. Our family, she repeated, testing how the words sounded. For a moment, they just stood there, listening to Michael's music fill the apartment, while the twins animatedly discussed their projects in the bedroom. The boardroom was tenser than usual that morning. Alex occupied his usual position at the head of the table, but something had changed in his posture. He was no longer the reluctant heir. There was a new determination in his gaze, as if he had finally found something worth fighting for. Jason Wells sat on the opposite side, a calculated smile on his lips. Between them, the board members were divided between curious looks and concerned expressions. Dr. Reynolds, the family lawyer, remained standing near the projection screen, his document folder fuller than usual. Gentlemen, Jason took the floor, rising with the studied elegance that was his trademark. I called this extraordinary meeting to discuss a delicate matter that directly affects the future of the Wells Group. Alex watched his half-brother circle the table like a predator, surrounding his prey. Jason was 10 years younger, the son of his father's second marriage. Since childhood, he had harbored a barely disguised bitterness at having been born on sea, the wrong side of the family. As you all must know, continued Jason, our president has been busy lately with personal matters. He gestured to Dr. Reynolds, who projected photos of Alex with Emily and the children on the screen. 3 illegitimate heirs, the result of a relationship during one of his escapes from corporate responsibility. Murmurs ran through the room. Alex remained impassive, although inside his heart was racing. The most interesting thing, Jason proceeded, is that these new family members have attracted considerable media attention. The screen now showed headlines about the piano prodigy and the little solar energy genius. The videos of Michael playing and Thomas's project had gone viral on social networks. And what exactly is the problem, Jason? Alex's voice sounded calm, controlled. The problem, my dear brother, is that there is a specific clause in our father's will. Jason made a dramatic pause, savoring the moment. Dr. Reynolds, please. The lawyer cleared his throat, removing a document from the folder. According to clause 23.5 of Mr. Richard Wells' will, the presidency of the group is conditional on maintaining the values and principles that built the Wells empire. Any significant deviation from these principles may result in the reassessment of succession by the board. And you consider my children a significant deviation? Asked Alex, his voice now carrying a tone of defiance. Not the boys themselves, Jason smiled, but the way you're handling the situation, exposing the Wells name, turning our family into a media circus. Not to mention the unstable history of the children's mother. Alex felt his blood boil upon hearing Jason mention Emily, but he maintained his composure. Unstable? A dismissed ex-employee who ended up on the streets, Jason gestured with disdain. Not exactly the profile we expect for the Wells family, is it? A brilliant economist, corrected Alex, who faced difficulties because of corporate decisions we made without considering the human impact. The same cold mentality that our father so prized. The room fell silent. It was the first time anyone had openly questioned the patriarch's methods. And what about the exceptional talents of the children? An elderly female board member broke the silence. The piano boy, he's extraordinary. Exactly my point, Jason seized the opportunity. Child prodigies, stories of overcoming, family drama, all very moving for social networks. But is this what we want for the Wells Group, to become a reality show? Alex rose slowly, his presence dominating the room. No, Jason. What we're becoming is something that you and our father never understood, human. He walked to the screen, where the photo of his children smiled at the room. These boys are not a threat to the Wells name. They are its evolution. Michael doesn't just play piano. He creates music that has already caught the attention of international maestros. Thomas, at 4 years old, developed a sustainable energy project that our own engineers are studying. And Lucas, well, come meet him and see for yourselves the brilliance of his ideas. All the more reason to question your leadership capacity, interrupted Jason. You are emotionally compromised. Yes, I am, admitted Alex, surprising everyone. And for the first time since I took this chair, I truly feel capable of leading, because now I understand that an empire isn't built on numbers alone. It's built on purpose. He turned his gaze to each board member. You can choose. We can continue to be the cold and calculating company that my father built, or we can evolve into something greater, something that combines business excellence with human responsibility. The silence that followed was interrupted by the sound of a phone. It was a message from Emily. Michael will give his first performance at the conservatory tonight. He asked for you to be there. Alex looked at the message, then at the room full of executives. The choice had never been so clear. The New York Conservatory was packed that night. The recital of the most promising students had attracted not only family members, but also music critics and personalities from the artistic world. Michael would be the last to perform, an honor rarely granted to such a young student. Emily adjusted her son's bow tie backstage, her hands trembling slightly. Michael, on the other hand, showed surprising calm. Aren't you nervous? She asked, smoothing a rebellious strand of the boy's hair. The music is already in here, he answered, touching his chest. I just need to let it out. Thomas and Lucas were sitting in the front row, dressed in their first suits. Lucas was drawing in his inseparable pad, while Thomas explained in whispers to the lady beside him how the theater's acoustic system worked. The seat next to the children remained empty. Emily tried not to look at it, not to want too much, not to expect Excuse me, is this seat taken?" Alex's voice made the twins smile. He was without his jacket, his tie slightly loose. Clearly he had come straight from the board meeting. "Dad." Thomas jumped onto his lap while Lucas smiled shyly. "I wouldn't miss this for anything," said Alex, sitting between his sons. His eyes met Emily's backstage and he nodded slightly. She returned the gesture, feeling a lump in her throat dissolve. The lights dimmed and the recital began. As other students performed, Alex noticed movement in the last rows. Jason was there, accompanied by some board members. His half-brother stared at him with an enigmatic smile before settling in. Finally, it was Michael's turn. The presenter announced him as a young revelation who promises to revolutionize the American musical scene. The boy walked to the piano, with the same naturalness with which he played at home. "He's going to play his own music," whispered Lucas, his eyes not leaving his brother. "What do you mean?" asked Alex. "The music that's in his head," explained Thomas. "The one he plays when he thinks no one is listening." Michael sat at the piano and for a moment closed his eyes. When his fingers touched the keys, the entire theater held its breath. The melody that emerged was different from anything they had ever heard. It wasn't a classical piece or a common contemporary composition. It was something new, something that blended technical complexity with a raw and honest emotion that only a child could express. Alex felt tears in his eyes as he recognized elements of the music. There were excerpts that reminded him of the mornings in the apartment, others that echoed the joy of the brothers playing together, and there was a part, near the end, that carried a bittersweet sweetness that could only represent their family's journey to this point. When the last note sounded, the silence lingered for a few seconds before the audience erupted in applause. Michael smiled, not at the public, but at his family in the front row. The critics present stood up. The lady next to Thomas wiped away tears. Even some of the board members seemed visibly moved. Jason was the first to leave, his face a mask of contained frustration. Backstage after the performance, the family gathered in a group hug. Michael was radiant, more from the pride in his parents' and brothers' eyes than from the praise of the specialists who jostled to congratulate him. "What do you call this music?" asked a critic who managed to approach. Michael looked at his family before answering, "New beginning." Emily felt Alex's hand discreetly seek hers. For the first time, she didn't pull away. Their fingers intertwined as they watched Michael being photographed with his brothers. "We need to talk," said Alex softly, "about the board meeting and about our future." Emily nodded, but before she could respond, they were interrupted by an elegant man who introduced himself as the director of one of Europe's main conservatories. The night was just beginning, and with it, a new phase in the lives of the Wells family. Richard Wells's private office remained untouched since his departure. Alex had never been able to occupy that space, preferring to work in his own room, but that morning something drew him there. Perhaps it was Jason's words about the will, or perhaps it was simply time to face the ghosts of the past. The aroma of old leather and noble wood still lingered in the air. The walls were covered with black and white photographs, 3 generations of Wells building their empire. Alex stopped in front of the last photo taken with his father, noticing for the first time how tense and unhappy he looked in it. "I thought I'd find you here," the voice of William Stewart, the most senior board member, sounded from the door. "William," Alex turned, surprised. "What are you doing here so early?" The older man entered, limping slightly, leaning on his cane. "Your father asked me to deliver something to you when the time was right, after your son's performance yesterday. I think that time has come." William pulled a yellowed envelope from the inside pocket of his jacket. The wax seal with the Wells coat of arms was still intact. "Your father wrote this on the night he discovered about Emily and the pregnancy," revealed William, extending the envelope. Alex felt his heart race. He knew. Richard Wells knew everything that happened in his empire. William smiled sadly. "Including your alter ego, David Miller." With trembling hands, Alex broke the seal. His father's strong, angular handwriting filled several pages. "My son, if you are reading this, it means you have finally found your true inheritance. Not in the shares of this company, but in the eyes of your own children. Yes, I knew about Emily from the beginning. I knew when you ran away to Miami, when you assumed another identity, when you fell in love with her, and I knew when she tried to contact you, pregnant and desperate. You must be wondering why I prevented her from reaching you. The answer is simple and terrible. I wanted you to learn the same lesson I learned too late, that no empire is worth the price of a lost family. I spent my life building the Wells Group, sacrificing everything and everyone in the process. I lost your mother, lost the chance to truly be your father, and created an illegitimate son full of bitterness and ambition. Now, seeing you follow the same steps, I realized that my greatest failure wasn't in business, it was human. The clause, in the will that Jason so wants to use against you, isn't about maintaining the old values of the Wells Empire. It's about transcending them. It's about proving that you understood what I never managed to understand, that a man's true legacy isn't in the buildings he built, but in the lives he touched. There is a second part of the will that only William knows about. In it, I make it clear that the real control of the group will only be transferred when the president demonstrates humanity and values superior to those of the market. In other words, when you choose your family above the empire. Jason will never understand this. He is the product of my worst flaws. Ambition without purpose, power without humanity. But you, Alex, have always been different. You've always had something of your mother in you, that ability to see beyond the numbers, to see the heart of people. Emily is not a threat to the Wells name. She is its salvation. And those children, they are the chance to rewrite our history, to build a legacy based on love and not on power. I know that when you read this letter, you will have already found your way to them. I know because, despite all my mistakes, I always knew your heart would guide you in the right direction. The choice is now yours, son. You can keep the empire and lose your soul as I did, or you can choose love and discover that there is a different kind of wealth in the world. Forgive this old man for his mistakes, and more importantly, forgive yourself for yours. Sometimes we need to completely lose ourselves to find our true north. With love, your father. Alex let the pages fall on the desk, his vision blurred by unshed tears. He ordered all contact from Emily to be blocked, he said, his voice hoarse. To force you into this choice, confirmed William. He knew that you would need to lose everything to find your true value. All this time, your father changed a lot in the last months, William approached, placing a hand on Alex's shoulder. The discovery of his grandchildren, even though he never met them, made him question all his choices. This letter was his last attempt to fix things. Alex looked at the photo on the wall. His father, always so austere and distant. There was a sadness in his eyes that only now he could recognize. "What are you going to do?" asked William. Before Alex could answer, his phone vibrated. It was a message from Thomas with a photo of the new solar energy project he was developing with Lucas. The text simply said, "Dad, I think we discovered something important." A smile formed on his lips as a certainty crystallized in his heart. Some choices in the end aren't really choices. They're just recognition of what was always meant to be. The improvised laboratory in the twins' bedroom looked like a curious mixture between a children's playground and a research center. On the walls, Lucas's detailed drawings mingled with technical diagrams. In the center of the room, Thomas had set up his expanded solar energy project, now occupying an entire table. "Look," Thomas excitedly explained to the small audience gathered in his room. Besides his parents and brothers, Dr. Sophia Bennett, a renowned researcher in sustainable energy, whom Emily had met at Columbia, was present. Lucas discovered a pattern in the sun's rays. Lucas, sitting on the floor with his drawing pad, added, "It's like a dance of light. Each ray has its own rhythm, like Michael's music." Michael, who was at the piano in the corner of the room, a gift from Alex after the recital, began to play softly a melody that seemed to translate the concept his brother was trying to explain into music. "Cities have their own symphony of light," he commented. "Extraordinary," murmured Dr. Bennett, examining the project. "They've managed to create a system that maximizes solar energy capture based on rhythmic absorption patterns. I've never seen anything like it." Emily watched the scene with a mixture of pride and amazement. Her children, who a few weeks ago were sleeping on staircases, were now potentially revolutionizing the field of sustainable energy. The most impressive thing, continued the researcher, is how they arrived at this. The integration between Lucas's artistic intuition, Thomas's technical understanding, and even Michael's musicality. It's as if each contributed a fundamental piece of the puzzle. Alex, who had been quiet until then, approached the project. And could this be applied on a large scale? With some adjustments and proper development, answered Dr. Bennett, this concept could revolutionize the way we capture and use solar energy. The potential for social impact is immense. Social impact? Emily asked, interested. Think of underprivileged communities having access to clean, low-cost energy, explained the researcher. Schools in remote areas, hospitals in regions without adequate infrastructure. The possibilities are endless. Alex felt something stir in his chest. There was the answer he had been seeking since reading his father's letter that morning. It wasn't about choosing between family and empire. It was about transforming the empire into something that served both family and society. Dr. Bennett, he said, his mind already formulating a plan, how long would it take to develop a commercial-scale prototype? With the proper structure, a few months, but we'd need a multidisciplinary team, laboratories. And what if I told you I can provide all that? Alex smiled, looking at Emily. The Wells Group has an energy division that's practically dormant, and now we have 3 very special consultants to lead innovation. The twins' eyes sparkled. Michael stopped playing, interested in the conversation. You want to turn their project into something real? Asked Emily, her voice mixing surprise and caution. I want to transform the Wells Group into something that makes a difference in the world, answered Alex. Something our children can be proud to inherit one day. Not an empire built on cold numbers, but a force for social transformation. Thomas was already jumping with excitement, explaining to Dr. Bennett all the ideas he had to improve the project. Lucas added new drawings to his pad, visualizing expanded possibilities. Michael returned to the piano, creating a melody that seemed to capture the energy of the moment. Emily approached Alex, her expression serious. Are you sure? Jason won't accept this easily. I'm sure of one thing, he replied, taking her hand. Whatever path we choose from here forward, we'll walk it together, as a family. At that moment, while the twins explained their project with childlike enthusiasm and precocious wisdom, while Michael transformed scientific concepts into music, while Emily finally allowed herself to smile without reservation, Alex knew that his father was right. The true legacy wasn't in the buildings or stock shares. It was there in that room, in the sparkle of his children's eyes and the warmth of Emily's hand in his. The St. Luke's Hospital was known for being the most exclusive in New York. Its immaculate and silent corridors contrasted with the human drama unfolding in the children's emergency room. Alex observed through the glass while Dr. Thompson examined little Lucas, one of the twins, who was still fighting a severe asthma attack. Emily was sitting next to the stretcher, her hands intertwined with her son's. She still hadn't directed a single word to Alex since he appeared on the stairs of the building offering help. Her face showed a mixture of wounded pride and maternal concern that broke his heart. The other 2 children, Michael, the oldest, and Thomas, the other twin, were sitting on a sofa in the corner of the room, watching everything with attentive and frightened eyes. Alex couldn't stop looking at them, identifying traits of his own family in each expression, in each gesture. The condition is serious, but manageable, said Dr. Thompson, approaching Alex. He needs proper treatment, specific medications, and a more stable environment. The crises were aggravated by exposure to the elements. Alex nodded, feeling the weight of guilt on his shoulders. How many nights had those children, his children, spent out in the open while he slept in his luxury penthouse? Emily, he called softly, approaching her for the first time since they arrived at the hospital. Can we talk? She hesitated for a moment, looked at Lucas, who was now sleeping more peacefully thanks to the medications, and finally agreed with a nod. She got up and followed him to a more private corner of the room. "Why did you never tell me?" he asked, keeping his voice low. "Tell you what, David, or should I say Alexander Wells?" Her voice had a hint of bitterness. "That I was pregnant by the man who lied about his identity and disappeared without a trace." Alex felt the blow. Every word was true and hurt like a stab wound. "I tried," she continued. "When I found out who you really were, I tried to contact you through the company. But guess what? I was fired before I could talk to you. A restructuring, they said. Without notice, without consideration for my condition." "I didn't know," he murmured. "I swear I didn't know about your pregnancy, Emily. If you had known what?" she interrupted. "Would you have used your power and money to solve everything? Is that what the Wells do, isn't it? Throw money at problems until they disappear." Her words hit him hard, but Alex kept his calm. He looked at the children. Michael was now consoling Thomas, who seemed frightened by the medical equipment connected to his brother. "No," he finally answered. "It's not about money. It's about doing the right thing, even if belatedly. Those children are my sons, Emily, our children, and I want to take responsibility." "Now?" she laughed without humor. "After 5 years? After we lost everything? After I had to abandon my master's degree, my dreams?" "Especially now," he said, his voice firm. "I can't change the past, Emily. But I can do something about the present and future." He took a card from his pocket and handed it to her. "This is the address of an apartment on Central Park West. It's furnished and ready to receive you all. 3 bedrooms, recreation area, 24-hour security. The children need stability. You know that." Emily looked at the card in her hands, then at Lucas on the stretcher. Her resistance was beginning to give way to the reality of her situation. "And there's more," continued Alex. "I found your academic documents. You were the best student in your course, Emily. You had a master's scholarship in economics at Columbia, which I couldn't accept because I was pregnant and alone," she completed. "The scholarship is still available," he revealed. "I spoke with the program coordinator. They would be happy to welcome you next semester." Emily closed her eyes, and Alex saw a solitary tear roll down her face. When she opened them again, there was a mixture of emotions in her gaze: anger, hope, fear, determination. "I'm not doing this for you," she finally said. "I'm doing it for my children. They deserve a better chance than I had." "Our children," Alexei corrected gently. "And that's all I ask. A chance to be part of their lives and to try to fix my mistakes." The moment was interrupted by a small noise. Michael had approached them, his green eyes, so similar to his father's, observing the scene with a wisdom beyond his years. "Mom," he called softly, "Lucas is waking up." The Central Park West apartment had never seemed so small as it did that afternoon. 2 social workers, a psychologist from Child Protective Services, and a representative from the district attorney's office occupied the living room, while Emily answered an interrogation that seemed endless. Alex had arrived minutes later, accompanied by 2 family lawyers. But what really caught attention weren't the adults with their questions and documents, it was the extraordinary composure of the children. Michael remained at the piano, playing softly. His music somehow managed to ease the tension in the environment. Thomas and Lucas had transformed their work table into an impromptu presentation, explaining their solar energy project with an eloquence that left the visitors speechless. "And here," explained Thomas, pointing to one of Lucas's drawings, "is where we calculate the angle of solar incidence using what Dr. Bennett calls a biomimetic algorithm." The younger social worker blinked several times, clearly confused. "You understand what you're explaining?" "Of course," replied Lucas, reaching for his notepad. "Do you want me to draw the mathematical process? It's like a musical score, but with numbers." Dr. Bennett, who was observing everything, intervened. "If I may, I'd like to present some data. These children aren't just prodigies. They're the product of a family environment that, despite past material difficulties, never stopped stimulating their intellectual and emotional development." She began presenting records of the project's progress, including interest from major international research centers. The unconventional teaching method that Emily developed, even in the most adverse conditions, produced extraordinary results. Alex, who had remained silent until then, approached Emily and held her hand publicly for the first time. "My wife," he said, the word sounding natural despite not yet being officially true, single-handedly raised 3 exceptional children while facing challenges that would have defeated most people. And now that we're together, we intend to use our resources to further develop their potential. The district attorney's representative frowned. "Mr. Wells, it appears that until recently, you weren't even aware of these children." "A mistake I'm correcting," responded Alex firmly. "And if you want to talk about negligence, I suggest you investigate why a pregnant employee's contact requests were systematically blocked by our company." Emily squeezed his hand in warning, but Alex continued. "I have here," and his lawyer presented a folder, all the contact protocols that Emily made during her pregnancy, as well as documents proving that her dismissal occurred without considering her pregnancy, a clear violation of labor law. The room fell silent, broken only by Michael's soft music, which now sounded like a hopeful waltz. "Mom," called Thomas suddenly, "can I show them the video of Michael's performance, the one that went viral?" The psychologist, who had remained quiet until then, nodded with interest. On the laptop screen, Michael's conservatory performance began to play. The music he had composed, New Beginning, filled the room. "This composition," explained Michael, stopping his piano playing for the first time since the meeting began, "is about our family, about how sometimes we need to go through difficult moments to find our true place." The older social worker discreetly wiped away a tear. "And that's not all," continued Thomas, excited. "Look at this." He opened a website showing that his solar energy project, developed with Lucas, had been selected for an important Youth Innovation Award. "Would you like to see my other drawings?" Lucas timidly offered to the district attorney's representative. "I have some about how we can use solar energy to help people who don't have electricity, like we didn't have before." Emily felt her heart expand with pride. Her children, who had faced so many difficulties, showed no bitterness or resentment, only a genuine desire to use their gifts to help others. The psychologist made some notes on his clipboard before addressing his colleagues. "I think we've seen enough here." Alex and Emily exchanged apprehensive looks, but the professional's gentle smile reassured them. "In 20 years of practice," he continued, "I've never seen children so well-adjusted and intellectually stimulated. Ms. Parker, or should I say future Mrs. Wells, congratulations. You are an example of resilience and maternal dedication." The children ran to hug their mother, while Alex enveloped them all in his arms. Dr. Bennett smiled, satisfied, organizing her notes about the project that she knew would change not only the future of sustainable energy, but also the lives of countless families. Outside the building, Jason received a call. The attempt to question. The children's custody had completely failed. His plan, instead of separating the family, had only served to strengthen it even more. The main boardroom of the Wells Group was packed that morning. This wasn't an ordinary board meeting. All major shareholders had been summoned. The buzzing of conversations ceased when Alex entered, accompanied by Emily and, to everyone's surprise, the 3 children, all formally dressed. Jason was already in his place, his face a mask of false serenity. Beside him, Dr. Reynolds looked uncomfortable, nervously fidgeting with his document folder. "Ladies and gentlemen," Alex began, his voice clear and firm, "I've called this extraordinary meeting not only to present the future of the Wells Group, but also to reveal some truths that need to come to light." He gave a signal, and Thomas stood up, walking to the screen. With surprising poise for his age, the boy began to present the solar energy project he had developed with Lucas. Here's the Helios system," explained Thomas, as complex graphs and diagrams appeared on the screen. "Using biomimetic principles and mathematical patterns identified by my brother Lucas, we've managed to increase solar capture efficiency by more than 40%. Lucas, normally shy, joined his brother to explain his technical drawings, which had now been transformed into 3D models by a team of engineers. "The most impressive thing," Dr. Bennett intervened, who was present as a technical consultant, is that this system can reduce the implementation cost of solar energy by 60%. This makes clean energy accessible to communities that could never dream of it before. The shareholders whispered among themselves, clearly impressed. Jason shifted uncomfortably in his chair. "But that's not all," continued Alex. "Michael, please." The oldest son approached the grand piano that had been placed in the corner of the room. His small hands began to play a melody that left everyone in absolute silence. "This music," explained Emily, speaking for the first time, "is based on the mathematical patterns we identified in the project. It's the translation into sound of solar light behavior." "This is ridiculous," Jason stood up abruptly. "This was supposed to be a business meeting, not a talent show." "On the contrary, Jason," William Stewart's voice sounded from the door. The senior board member entered limping, carrying an old folder. "This is exactly what your father wanted to see." A murmur ran through the room. William walked to the main table and opened the folder. "I have here," he said, "the complete clause of Richard Wells's will. The one that you, Jason, so conveniently failed to mention when you tried to question your brother's leadership." Jason visibly paled. "The definitive control of the Wells Group," read William, "will be transferred only when the president demonstrates the ability to unite business excellence with humanity. The true successor will be the one who understands that an empire without heart is an empty fortress." William made a significant pause before continuing. "And there's more. If my son Alex finds his way back to his true essence, if he manages to transform this empire into something that benefits not just shareholders, but society as a whole, then the group will be in good hands." The room was in complete silence now. Michael had stopped playing and the twins watched the scene with interest. "Your father knew, Jason," said Alex softly. "He knew about Emily, about the children. And he left this clause as a test, not for me, but for all of us. A test about what kind of company we want to be." He walked to the center of the room, where a hologram of the Helios project now gently rotated. This project, created by two children who until recently lived on the streets, has the potential to revolutionize access to clean energy throughout the country. And this is just the beginning. Imagine what we can do if we start looking at the world not just through the lens of profit, but also of social impact. Emily approached him, holding his hand. The children joined them, forming an image that made several of those present smile with emotion. "I propose a vote," said William, "to formalize not only Alex's leadership, but also the new direction of the Wells Group." Jason stood up again, his face red with fury. "This is a coup. You can't—" "Yes, we can," interrupted an elderly female shareholder. "And do you know why, Jason? Because for the first time in years, I see the true spirit of the Wells in this room, not in your empty ambition, but in the courage of this family to do the right thing." The vote was almost unanimous. When the last vote was counted, Michael spontaneously returned to the piano, playing the first chords of New Beginning. Lucas picked up his drawing pad and began to sketch the moment, while Thomas excitedly explained more technical details of the project to some shareholders. Alex looked at Emily, his eyes shining with emotion. "We did it," he whispered. "No," she gently corrected. "We've only just begun." The news of the Wells Group's transformation dominated economic headlines for weeks. Business empire revolutionizes sustainable energy market. Child prodigies lead green innovation. Wells Group announces billion-dollar fund for social projects. Each day brought a new angle to the story that captured the public's imagination. Emily walked through the corridors of Columbia University, now not just as a master's student, but also as coordinator of the newly created Wells Institute for Social Innovation. Her research project, combining behavioral economics with sustainable development, had become a reference in academic circles. "Professor Parker," a student called to her in the hallway, "I saw your family on the Sunday program. It was amazing. How Michael managed to explain quantum physics concepts through music." Emily smiled, remembering the special presentation her children had given on the highest-rated show in the country. Michael had created a symphony based on particle movement, while Thomas and Lucas explained how it related to their solar energy system. In her office, she found a bouquet of yellow flowers, her mother's favorites. The card, written in Alex's elegant handwriting, simply said, "5 months, it feels like a lifetime, I love you." She felt it too, as if her entire previous life had been merely a prelude to what they were living now. The difficulties hadn't magically disappeared, but they had transformed into steps towards something greater. Her phone vibrated with a message from Thomas. "Mom, I need your help with something important." Attached was a photo of the new project he and Lucas were working on, a water purification system that utilized solar energy. At the conservatory, Michael was preparing for his first composition with a full orchestra. Maestro Viktor Petrov, a living legend of classical music, had flown specially from Vienna to work with him. "It's extraordinary," the maestro commented to Alex, who was watching the rehearsal. "He doesn't just understand music. He understands the mathematics behind it, the physics of sound, the emotion of harmony. In 40 years of career, I've never seen anything like it." Alex watched his son conduct the orchestra with serene confidence. The music that emerged was both complex and accessible, just like the twins' project. Jason hadn't appeared at the company since the board meeting. Sources said he was in Europe, supposedly restructuring his life. The last attempt to contest, the will had been withdrawn by his own lawyers. Dr. Reynolds, surprisingly, had asked to remain with the company, now dedicating himself to the legal aspects of social projects. "So your father would be proud," he said to Alex one afternoon. "Not for the business success, but for you having found your own path." In the Millennium Tower Hotel penthouse, now transformed into a social innovation space, a new meeting was in progress. Representatives from underprivileged communities presented their energy needs, while the technical team, led by the twins, proposed solutions. "Look," explained Lucas, his drawings now digitized into interactive holograms, "we can adapt the Helios system for each specific region. In the Amazon, for example, we consider the density of the forest and the rainfall patterns." Thomas complemented with precise technical data, while Michael, who had arrived from rehearsal, improvised on the piano melodies that translated each concept into music. Emily, who had just arrived from the university, stopped at the door to observe the scene. Alex approached from behind, embracing her. "Sometimes I'm still afraid to wake up," she whispered, "to discover that all this is a dream." "If it's a dream," he replied, "it's one we've built together, and it's only just beginning." On Lucas's table, a new drawing was taking shape, an artistic representation of the Wells family. It wasn't just a portrait, but a vision of the future, each member contributing their unique gift to create something greater than the sum of its parts. "You know what's most amazing?" said Thomas, approaching his parents with a tablet full of calculations. "We discovered that when we help others, the numbers grow in a different way. It's not just mathematics, it's something more." "It's love," completed Lucas without taking his eyes from his drawing. "Grandpa wrote that in the letter, didn't he? That an empire without heart is an empty fortress." Michael played a soft chord on the piano. "It's like in music," he said. "The notes alone are just notes, but when you unite them with purpose and love, they transform into something magical." Alex and Emily exchanged a look. Their children, in their innocent wisdom, had understood something that many adults take a lifetime to grasp. True success isn't measured in figures, but in the positive impact we cause in the world. The auditorium of the Legislative Assembly was packed. Emily, dressed in an elegant navy blue suit, adjusted the microphone while observing the diverse audience before her. Parliamentarians, business people, social activists, and, in a special place in the front row, her family. "1 year ago," she began, her voice firm despite the emotion, "my children and I were sleeping on a staircase. Today, I'm here to talk about a bill that can transform the lives of thousands of working mothers." On the screen behind her, numbers and graphs began to appear, the result of her master's research on the economic impact of maternity protection in the corporate environment. "I'm not here just as a researcher or businesswoman," she continued. "I'm here as someone who has experienced firsthand the consequences of a system that often fails its women and children. Alex squeezed Michael's hand, who watched his mother with shining eyes. The twins, seated beside them, were taking notes on their tablets. Thomas about the energy system illuminating the auditorium, Lucas drawing patterns he saw in the audience arrangement. Bill 2547, which I have the honor to defend today, is not just about maternity leave or job stability, Emily continued. It's about recognizing that a society's progress can be measured by how it treats its mothers and children. In the back rows, a movement caught attention. Jason Wells was discreetly entering, looking different from the past months, thinner, less arrogant. He met Alex's gaze and gave a small nod. The data is clear, Emily pointed to the graphs. Companies that implement maternity support policies don't just retain talent, they thrive. The Wells Group is a living example of this. The presentation continued with case studies, including the transformation of the group itself. The new support program for pregnant employees and single mothers had become a national reference, as had the pilot project for corporate childcare developed in partnership with the Wells Institute. But the real impact, Emily made a significant pause, is in the human stories behind the numbers. A video began playing, showing different women sharing their experiences. Among them were Wells Group employees who had benefited from the new policies, including a young engineer who now led the implementation of the Helios system in underprivileged communities. "Mom," whispered Thomas to Lucas, "she's using the light pattern we discovered in the project." Indeed, the auditorium's lighting had been specially designed following principles developed by the twins, creating a more welcoming and energy-efficient environment. Michael fidgeted in his chair, his hands moving as if playing an invisible piano. Alex recognized the gesture. His son was mentally composing, transforming the moment into music. In conclusion, Emily looked directly at her children. "I'd like to share a lesson I learned from 3 little teachers. They taught me that talent and potential exist everywhere, on staircases, on streets, in places we often choose not to see. Our responsibility as a society is to create an environment where these talents can flourish." The ovation was instantaneous and prolonged. Lawmakers from different parties rose, demonstrating a rare moment of unity around a cause. Backstage, after the presentation, the family gathered in a group hug. Jason approached hesitantly. "Emily," he said, his voice softer than usual, "your presentation was extraordinary." "Uncle Jason," Thomas ran to him, surprising everyone. "Do you want to see the new project we're developing? It's about using solar energy to purify water." The man blinked, disconcerted by the warm reception from the child. He had tried to separate from the family months before. "I would love to," he replied, a genuine smile appearing on his face. Alex observed the scene with a mixture of surprise and hope. Emily intertwined her fingers with his. "The children," she said softly, "they have this gift of seeing the best in people, don't they?" Lucas, who had been quiet until then, showed his latest drawing, an abstract representation of the Wells family, including Jason at its edges, like a color trying to harmonize with the whole. "It's like in the Helios system," he explained with his peculiar wisdom. "Sometimes light needs to find the right angle to be utilized." Michael sat at the lobby piano and began to play a new composition, something that perfectly captured the moment of reconciliation and renewal they were experiencing. "The bill," commented a parliamentary aide who was passing by, "should be approved unanimously. Your story of the transformation of the Wells Group is exactly the kind of example we needed." Emily smiled, watching her children. Michael at the piano, the twins excitedly explaining their project to Jason, who listened with genuine interest. Alex at her side, finally at peace with his role as leader of a new kind of empire. One built on foundations of humanity and purpose. "You know," she said to Alex, "I think I finally understood what your father meant in the letter about the true legacy." "And what is it?" he asked, although he already knew the answer. "This," she gestured to the scene before her, "not the power or the money, but the ability to transform lives, to create something that continues growing and benefiting others long after us." The first community fully powered by the Helios system was inaugurated in a small village in rural Oregon. The bright western sun, previously just an element of the landscape, now powered not only the homes, but also the school, health clinic, and a newly built cultural center. The twins, now 5 years old, personally supervised the installation, explaining the technical details to a team of fascinated engineers. Lucas had developed a new set of drawings specifically adapting the system to forest conditions. "See," explained Thomas, pointing to a specially designed panel, "here the light dances differently because of the humidity, so we made adjustments to the capture angle." Emily, who coordinated the social project through the Wells Institute, watched her sons with pride. Beside her, a local community leader wiped away tears of emotion. "Ms. Parker," said the woman, "you can't imagine what this means for us. Our children can now study at night. The clinic can keep medicines refrigerated." At the community school, Michael had discovered something extraordinary: several local children with exceptional musical talents. Seated at a piano donated by the Institute, he taught music theory in a unique way, relating the notes to the patterns of the surrounding nature. "It's like the birds' songs," he explained to his young students. "Each has its rhythm, its melody. Together they make a symphony." Alex arrived by helicopter late in the afternoon, bringing a surprise: Jason. His brother had spent the last few months in a deep process of personal transformation and now asked to participate in the group's social projects. "The children taught me something important," Jason confessed as they walked through the village. "That true power isn't about control, it's about positive impact." Night fell over the community, but for the first time, darkness didn't bring blackness. The lights powered by the Helios system created a welcoming environment where residents gathered to celebrate. In the cultural center, Michael and his new students presented a special composition, a fusion of classical music with Western folk rhythms. The twins had created a lighting system that responded to musical notes, transforming the space into a multi-sensory experience. "It's incredible," commented Dr. Bennett, who was present to document the project. "They haven't just created sustainable technology, they've created a completely new form of integration between science and community." Emily and Alex watched everything hand in hand. Their children, who once had no place to sleep, were now helping to illuminate the path for others. The Wells Empire, once a symbol of cold and calculated power, was transforming into a force for positive change. "You know what's most special?" said Lucas, approaching his parents with his drawing pad. "Each place has its own light, its own music. We're not just giving energy to people, we're helping them find their own light." Thomas agreed, excited. "And the best part is that each community can adapt the system in their own way. It's like we're planting seeds that will grow differently in each place." Michael, who had finished his presentation, joined the family. "The children here have music inside them, like me. They just needed a chance to let it out." Jason, who was listening to the conversation, commented with newly discovered humility, "You three have taught me more about true leadership than all the business schools I attended." A local girl approached shyly, offering Lucas a drawing. She had made her interpretation of the Helios system mixed with elements of the forest. The young Wells smiled, recognizing in the childish stroke the same passion that drove him. "See," he said to his parents, "the light is everywhere. Sometimes we just need to help people see it." As the celebration continued into the night, Alex embraced his family, thinking about how life took extraordinary turns. From a reluctant heir, he had transformed into the leader of a quiet revolution. From a fragmented family, they had become an example of how power can be used for the greater good. Emily looked at the starry Oregon sky, now complemented by the soft illumination of the Helios system. "Our children," she said softly, "aren't just changing the world, they're showing that there's a better way to live in it." Michael's music, mixed with the sounds of the forest and the laughter of local children, created a symphony of hope. A new story was being written, not just for the Wells family, but for all those whom their lights now reached. The World Forum on Social Innovation in Geneva didn't usually have children among its speakers, but that morning, 3 small figures occupied the main stage, causing an unprecedented commotion at the event. Michael, Thomas, and Lucas Wells, now known internationally as the Young Transformers, were presenting the results of the first year of the Helios system. Behind them, a giant screen showed images of transformed communities in different parts of the world. "Our journey began on a staircase," said Michael into the microphone, his voice clear and confident. "But we discovered that sometimes we need to go down a few steps to be able to climb higher." Thomas took over the presentation, explaining the technical aspects of the project with an eloquence that made the experts present lean forward in their chairs to better hear. "The Helios system isn't just about solar energy," he explained. "It's about finding the light that already exists in each place and helping it shine brighter." Lucas, traditionally the shyest of the three, surprised everyone with his participation. His drawings, now animated in three-dimensional holograms, showed how the system adapted to different environments and cultures. "Each community has its own rhythm," he explained as the images danced in the air. "Like a different song that needs to be heard in the right way." In the front row, Emily and Alex watched their children with a mixture of pride and amazement. Beside them, Jason smiled, completely transformed from his former self. He now led the international division of the Wells Institute, coordinating the implementation of the Helios system in developing countries. "It's incredible," whispered a UN delegate seated nearby. "They're not just presenting technology, they're showing a new way of thinking about social development." The highlight of the presentation came when Michael sat at the grand piano on the stage. As he played an original composition, Thomas and Lucas demonstrated how the music related to the energy patterns of the Helios system. "Look," explained Thomas, pointing to graphs that pulsed in sync with the music. "Energy efficiency increases when we follow the natural patterns of light, just as music becomes more beautiful when we respect the natural rhythm of the notes." A live video connection showed communities around the world that had benefited from the project. From the Amazon to the African Sahel, from villages in the Himalayas to urban slums, the Helios system had adapted to each local reality, always maintaining its transformative essence. "But the most important thing," said Lucas, his soft voice, carrying a wisdom beyond his years, "is that each place that receives the system begins to create its own solutions. It's like a seed we plant, but that grows in a unique way in each garden." Emily, who now besides coordinating the Wells Institute had become an influential voice in public policies for social development, noticed tears in the eyes of several. "Delegates, they're not just changing realities," commented Alex, holding her hand. "They're changing the way people think about change." Jason, who had spent months traveling with the children to implement the project in different countries, added, "It's amazing how they can see possibilities where most people only see problems." The presentation ended with a surprising announcement. The Helios system would be made available in open source to communities and social organizations around the world. "Because light," explained Michael at the piano, playing the final chords of his composition, "is something that becomes stronger when shared." Thomas completed, "And when one person lights their own light, so they illuminate the path for others," finished Lucas. The ovation that followed was deafening. Delegates from different countries stood up, many wiping away tears. On the screen, the communities connected live also celebrated, creating a global wave of emotion. Backstage after the presentation, the family gathered in a group hug. Emily looked at her children, no longer the frightened children from the staircase, but young leaders who maintained their innocence and purity, despite worldwide recognition. "You know what's coolest?" said Thomas, his eyes shining with excitement. "Each place we visit teaches us something new about the system. It's like it's alive, growing with each new experience." "Like music," added Michael. "Each person who plays adds something of their own, makes the melody richer." Lucas showed his most recent drawing, a representation of the world where points of light connected, forming a bright network of possibilities. "And this," he said softly, "is just the beginning." Alex observed his son's drawing, thinking about how proud his father would be. The Wells empire hadn't just survived the transformation, it had become something much larger and more significant than anyone could have imagined. Carnegie Hall was completely full that special night. On stage, the New York Symphony Orchestra prepared for a unique performance, the world premiere of Tomorrow's Lights, a composition by Michael Wells in collaboration with young talents discovered in communities served by the Helios system. The boxes, authorities, and business leaders mingled with residents of the benefited communities, creating a social mosaic rarely seen at events of this caliber. Emily, elegant in a blue dress, watched the final preparations beside Alex. "It seems like yesterday," she said, her voice choked with emotion, "that he was playing on an imaginary piano while we slept on the staircase." Thomas and Lucas occupied special places near the stage. They had created special lighting for the concert, using the principles of the Helios system to create an immersive experience that reacted to the music. "It's as if the light sang along," Lucas explained to a reporter, interviewing him before the start of the show. His drawings, now transformed into artistic projections, decorated the hall's ceiling. "And each note has its own energy," added Thomas, showing on his tablet how the lighting automatically adjusted to musical frequencies. "It's the mathematics of beauty." Jason, seated with the family, held a sealed envelope. "It's the final report of the international audit," he said, smiling. "The Helios system has exceeded all expectations. It's already benefiting more than 1 million people in 15 countries. The audience's murmur ceased when Michael took the stage. At 5 years old, he was probably the youngest conductor to appear on that historic stage, but his presence had a natural authority that made everyone forget his age. The orchestra was unique. Besides professional musicians, it included children and young people from communities served by the project. Some had learned music through the cultural programs of the Wells Institute. Others were natural talents discovered during implementations of the Helios system. "Each of you," said Michael into the microphone, his clear voice echoing through the hall, "carries a special light. This music is about how these lights meet and create something greater." The first chords began softly, like the sunrise. The lights projected by the twins danced through the environment, creating a magical atmosphere. Gradually, the music grew, incorporating elements from the different cultures represented on stage. Emily recognized excerpts that referred to her life on the staircase, notes that spoke of hope amid darkness. Alex identified moments that told the story of his personal transformation from reluctant heir to humanitarian leader. Jason, moved, heard in the music echoes of his own journey of redemption. The twins, focused on their lighting controls, smiled as they recognized how their brother had translated scientific principles into musical harmony. At the high point of the performance, a children's choir joined the orchestra. They were voices from different parts of the world, connected by video conference, their images projected on translucent screens that floated across the stage. "It's like the Helios system," whispered Lucas to Thomas. "Each shines in their own way, but together we make a greater light." The music reached its climax in an explosion of light and sound that made the audience hold their breath. The children's voices, the orchestra's instruments, and the dancing lights united in a celebration of possibilities. When the last note sounded, there was a moment of reverent silence before the hall erupted in applause. People openly wept, embracing strangers beside them. The social, cultural, and economic barriers seemed to have dissolved in the music. Michael invited his brothers to the stage. The three young Wells, holding hands, represented more than a story of family overcoming. They were a symbol of how talent and opportunity, when nurtured with love and purpose, can transform the world. Emily and Alex went on stage to embrace their children. Jason joined them, completing the picture of a family that had learned that true power lies in the ability to illuminate the path for others. "You know," said Michael to the audience that continued applauding, "this music isn't just ours. It belongs to everyone who believes they can make a difference in the world." Thomas added, "Like the sun which charges nothing to shine." And Lucas, with his profound simplicity, concluded, "And the more people shine together, the more light we have to illuminate new paths." The three completed in unison. In the audience, an elderly lady commented to her neighbor, "These boys aren't just making music or technology. They're reminding us of what we can be when we choose to see the light in each other." The night ended with a special encore. Michael invited children from the audience to join him at the piano, creating a spontaneous melody that celebrated the moment. The lights projected by the twins transformed the austere Carnegie Hall into a kaleidoscope of possibilities, where each person present could see themselves as part of something greater. Richard Wells's old office had been completely transformed. The austere walls now displayed a curious mixture of old family photographs with Lucas's colorful drawings. Michael's piano occupied a strategic corner, while a specially designed project table for the twins dominated another space. Alex was sitting in his father's old chair, but the posture was different, relaxed, at peace. On his desk, a special Forbes report highlighted the Wells Group as an example of business transformation of the century. How a family reinvented the meaning of corporate power. "Dad," Thomas's voice pulled him from his thoughts. "Look what we discovered." The twins came running into the office, followed by Michael and Emily. Lucas carried a new set of drawings, while Thomas manipulated a holographic projection on his tablet. "We managed to adapt the Helios system for overpopulated urban areas," explained Thomas, his eyes shining with enthusiasm, "using the building's own structures as energy collectors." Lucas spread his drawings on the desk. "It's like a web of light," he explained. "Each building becomes part of a larger network." Michael, who had sat at the piano, began to play softly, a melody that seemed to translate the concept into music. "Cities have their own symphony of light," he commented. Emily smiled, adjusting some papers in her hands. "And the timing couldn't be better. The Senate just approved the Social Energy Incentive Act. All major urban constructions will have to include renewable energy systems with community benefit." "The law you helped create," Alex pulled Emily close, proud. Her master's had transformed into a doctorate, and her work at the Wells Institute was revolutionizing public policies throughout the country. The intercom rang. It was Jason, accompanied by a surprise, William Stewart, the old board member who had delivered Richard Wells' letter. "I thought you'd like to see this," said William, pulling a yellowed envelope from his briefcase. "I found it in your father's personal archives. It's a continuation of the letter, written on the day he discovered the children's special talents." Alex took the envelope with trembling hands. His father's strong handwriting filled only half a page. "My son, if you're reading this, it means my predictions have been confirmed. Your children aren't just your heirs, they're catalysts for a transformation that I always knew our family needed." When I learned of Emily's pregnancy, I investigated her background. Her extraordinary intelligence, her human vision of business. I knew those children would be special. That's why I created the Wills Clause, not to test you, but to ensure that the Wells empire would transform into something greater than numbers and power. The true legacy isn't in the buildings we built, but in the lives we transformed. Your children understood this instinctively, in a way that took me a lifetime to comprehend. Now, seeing what you've built together, I know that the Wells name finally means something beyond power. It means light. With love and pride. Your father. The silence that followed was broken by Michael, who began to play a soft variation of New Beginning, the music that had marked the start of their public journey. "So Grandpa knew?" asked Thomas, impressed. "About us, about the Helios system, about everything." "Not exactly," replied Jason, who had transformed into a loving and present uncle. But he knew that something special would happen when unique talents were nurtured with love and purpose. Lucas, who had been absorbed in his drawings, raised his head. "It's like the Helios system," he said, with his characteristic wisdom. "Sometimes the light is already there. We just need to create the right environment for it to shine." Emily hugged her children, remembering the staircase where it all began. "And to think I was afraid to accept help," she said softly. "Sometimes," replied Alex, joining the hug, "we need to accept light from others to discover that we too can shine." William observed the scene with moist eyes. In 50 years working with the Wells family, he had never seen the empire so alive, so full of purpose. Michael began to play a new melody, something that seemed to combine elements of new beginning with the rhythmic patterns of the Helios system. The twins immediately recognized the mathematics behind the notes, their brilliant minds already converting music into light. "You know what's most incredible?" said Thomas, his eyes shining. "Each person the Helios system helps becomes a new source of light. Like a chain reaction of kindness," added Lucas, adding new elements to his drawing. Alex looked at his father's portrait on the wall. The austere countenance now seemed to smile subtly, as if approving the new direction his family had taken. "True power," he said, embracing his family, "isn't in controlling the light. It's in helping it spread," they all completed together, their voices blending like a perfect harmony in the music that Michael continued to play. The sun was setting over New York, painting the sky with shades of orange and pink that seemed to dialogue with the Helios system lights that now dotted the city. From the rooftop of the Wells Institute, the family watched the metropolis gradually transform into a mosaic of luminous points. "Each light has a story," said Michael, seated at the piano where he usually composed his symphonies of hope. At 6 years old, he was already internationally recognized, not just as a musical prodigy, but as a young man who used music to transform realities. Thomas and Lucas, now 5.5 years old, had just returned from a global conference on sustainable energy, where they presented the latest evolution of the Helios system. The project that began in their bedroom had transformed into a worldwide movement for democratization of clean energy. "Look," Thomas pointed to a specific set of lights in the outskirts. "That's the first community that implemented the self-managed system. They're already producing enough energy to supply 3 neighboring districts." Lucas, with his inseparable drawing pad, traced patterns that connected the points of light. "It's like a terrestrial constellation," he observed, each point connected to others, creating something greater. Emily, who had just defended her doctorate with distinction, embraced Alex from behind. Her work on the socio-economic impact of the Helios system had become a global reference in sustainable development. "Thinking about how much we've changed?" she asked, noticing her husband's contemplative look. "Thinking about how much we've grown," he replied, smiling. "All of us." Jason joined them on the rooftop, carrying a folder of reports. "You won't believe the numbers from the last quarter," he said. But his enthusiasm wasn't about profits. It was about the number of lives impacted by the project. 10 million people in 30 countries, he read. And this is just the beginning. Monthatail. Wells Institute had become a global center for social innovation. Each day, new projects were born from the synergy between sustainable technology and human development. The empire that Richard Wells had built hadn't diminished. It had transformed into something much greater than money or power. "You know what's coolest?" said Michael, his fingers dancing softly over the piano keys. "Each place has its own music. Now, the communities aren't just receivers of light, they're creators." Thomas agreed enthusiastically. "Like that group of young inventors in the Bronx, they took our system and created an incredible adaptation to utilize rainwater." "And the artisans from the Midwest," added Lucas, showing a new drawing. "They transformed the solar panels into works of art, maintaining all the efficiency." Emily smiled, remembering the staircase where it all began. "Sometimes I still wonder, what if you hadn't looked out the window that night, Alex?" "I was always going to look," he replied with certainty. "Maybe not that night, but at some point. Some lights are too strong to be ignored." The soft sound of Michael's piano filled the environment as night completely fell over the city. His new composition, Infinite Light, perfectly captured the moment, a melody that spoke of transformation, hope, and the power of love to illuminate paths. "It's amazing," observed Jason, "how 3 children taught us the true meaning of legacy." "It's not just us 3, corrected Thomas with wisdom. "It's each person who believes they can make a difference." Lucas raised his latest drawing, an artistic representation of the Wells family that expanded in waves of light, connecting to other families, other stories, other dreams. "True light," he said softly, "is the one we kindle in each other." Michael played the final chords of his music, which seemed to dance with the city lights. The Helios system, responding to the melody, created a spectacle of colors in the night sky. Alex looked at his family, Emily, the boys, Jason, and felt a deep certainty. The empire his father had built hadn't ended. It had evolved into something much more valuable, a beacon of hope and transformation. And this, he said, embracing them all together.